Boom. Bam, I got it. And Angelo, you want to know if I'm ready? I am ready, man. I am ready to ski. Skis are starting to come in. Boots are coming in. We're pretty psyched with Blizzard Technica coming back on to sponsor the Fall Line with KS and Company podcast. And we also have Nick's Boot Fitting over at Mount Snow. And if your boots are coming in or you haven't ordered your boots yet, you might want to run over there and see Nick and George over at Nick's Boot Fitting to get stuff sized up and get done. And then also super exciting, we don't have snow yet, Angelo, but Rollerblade coming on this winter for sponsorship. So that's pretty cool. Miles Cotter Sparrow joined up with us, and hopefully we do some neat things with those guys as we move forward. Awesome. And I have to say, I am super excited tonight for our third episode of season 3. And we have Perry Schmunk, who is the managing director of the Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance. I hope I got all that right, Perry.
Yeah, very good.
Cool.
My last name's not an easy one, so you did a great job.
Well, I did listen to a couple of YouTube videos that you were in, that you were doing some things with the Canadian, your job there. And I said, okay, my wife said that to me, make sure you get his last name close. So I did hear you pronounce it a few times, so I had to practice a little bit. Yeah. So I didn't practice in front of the mirror or anything, but I was practicing. So, and it's pretty cool to talking outside our US of A, but in the North Americas. It's kind of cool, really close. And how long have you been in the position?
Coming up on 4 years.
4 years, cool.
Yeah,
that is awesome. That's like your number 4. I know, because as we talk later, this number 4 in 4 years is going to come up, because one of the coolest things that I didn't realize was going to be the thing with the podcast that our listeners tell Angelo and I is our first question. We always ask people that are on for the first time that are skiers. And that is, what is it? How did you learn how to ski? Where did you learn how to ski? Who'd you learn how to ski with? And I you're the first person coming on that I read a little bit about that story, just getting on skis. So I know our listeners are going to be pretty interested in that.
Sure. If you want me to jump right into it. So, I grew up in Saskatchewan, which is a province kind of in the middle of the country of Canada. It's flat, cold is kind of what it's known for. It's a bit of a stereotype, but a typical Saskatchewan kid. I played hockey most of my life. Did not ski as a kid, and then I went into university. And the thought at the time when I went to university was to be a high school phys ed teacher. And one of the requirements of the phys ed program is I needed a first aid course, and a couple that were recognized by the university were a program called the St. John's Ambulance. Another one was the Canadian Ski Patrol system. For its first aid. That the Canadian Ski Patrol system happened to work for my schedule, with things that I was doing at the time, which was school, playing football, and all the rest of it. So I took it for the first aid course. I was the only person there that took it for the first aid, pretty much. Everyone else was there because it in some way gave them access to either free or discounted skiing. But I got to socialize with these people, and that's what led me to try skiing for the very first time. And in advance of skiing with, what would be my Canadian Ski Patrol peers, I did go out skiing at my local little hill at the time. With my dad, first time, and this is very stereotypical, blue downfill jacket, blue jeans, and we went and tried skiing for the first time. Anyways, I liked it. I think I'm probably going to say this. I think the fact that I was pretty used to sliding on skates probably made it, a little easier to pick up than maybe most. But anyways, I got hooked. I got hooked on it. I started, then volunteering at the local chapter of the ski patrol system. So I did my rotation, which was probably once a week, ski patrolling and whatever. And after one season of doing that chapter of the ski patrol system, and they were relatively well funded. They raised money quite successfully from a ski swap. So, they had cash to put back into their chapter, if you will. And they paid for me to take what at the time was a Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance level 2 course. At that time, you could go direct to the level 2. So I took that Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance level 2 course. So keep in mind, at that time, I was taking education classes about phys ed. So literally, a professor of badminton, a professor of gymnastics, and all these type of classes. And when I when I took the ski instructors course, I thought, well, these two guys are as great as any of my professors. Like these guys were, they were pros. They knew their job. Highly, just articulate, just really truly great educators, and that inspired me. And as I went through the course, I got to know about their life as well, which literally at the time they both worked in Banff, they both worked in New Zealand in our, in the northern hemisphere summers and so on. And I went, wow, there's the answer. I had nothing against being a high school phys ed teacher, but when I saw what these guys did, one of the fears that I did have is that I would spend my entire life in Saskatchewan. and when I saw these two ski instructors, I thought, well, this was my way to see the world. And again, I'll keep the story short. So that was it. So when I finished university that cycle, I then moved to Banff, where I worked at Sunshine Village, the first year as a full-time ski pro. Very quickly, then I worked in Truro, New Zealand, did the back-to-back season thing, and I was hooked. And maybe I'll add one last thing. When I took that level 2 course from those two guys, and I'm really going to date myself because this is pre-internet, I went to my local video store and I rented a movie called Movement in Motion, which was a 15-minute piece produced by Warren Miller, and it was done on the Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance 1983 demo team. And when I saw that, I went, well, there's the blueprint for my life. I want to do that. And literally, so that next year when I went to Banff, knowing the names on that list, I went to and at the time, Don Corvin, he was one of those member team members, those demo team members. He was the ski school director at Sunshine Village. And I want to work there. I want to work for a demo team member. And hence, that was the course that I was on.
That is so awesome. So I do want to know, what did your dad do? I mean, you were on your course and you had your thing. Did your dad continue to ski?
Yeah, no, he did. And that was kind of a catalyst for my family to get into it today. I've got one sibling, a sister, and she does family vacations with her kids. My parents are a little older now, but for years, from that point on, they would come see me wherever I was working in the mountains, and they'd come skiing, and yeah, they definitely took it up, and it was a big part of their life and obviously my life from that point forward.
It's so cool. So cool. And I'm going to college and need my first aid, and bam. And then like 4 years later, I'm like trainer in the Canadian Ski Instructor Alliance. It's like boom, boom, boom. I wish we could do that fast. Angelo, how many years did it was it from when you started not skiing, but until you went to ed staff? Wasn't 4.
No, and I didn't get certified right away. I started to teach skiing in 1989-90. Yeah. And I got my level 1 in 94, and then level 2 in 95, and level 3 in 99. So 5 years for me to go through our process, but I had been teaching for 9 years at the time. Yeah.
And then
about double the time Perry took.
Skiers behind us.
Huh?
We skied for like decades before we went. And then Perry comes in and goes, you don't need all that prep time.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't just that though. I mean, I worked in a ski school, and, I was fairly, low on the seniority list, obviously, when I started. But there was a really strong training culture in the ski school. Of course, I mentioned Don Corvin, kind of the head trainer, or quote unquote, I think his title was technical director back in the time, a guy by the name of Shinseki. And whenever we were not working as a ski school, we trained, and that probably was 8:30 to 4:30 if there wasn't a lesson to be had. In fact, in most cases, there was a system at lineup, either goggles up or goggles down, whether you wanted to work or not. And most of us were goggles down, as in we didn't want to work because we'd rather go training. And I can't, of that ski school, and I'm gonna be close. Back in the day, that might have been 20, 25 pros. I don't know of who didn't go on to get our top certification. And notables, that even your listeners would know. That means people like Steve Smart, Janice Morgan, like that. There was a list of kind of who's who in our organization that came through that. And don't get me wrong, there are other ski schools in Canada like that, like Tremblant East, and then later, Whistler, and but a strong training culture. and it turned out, a lot of highly certified without question.
I love that goggles up, goggles down. That's like a universal thing. I think it doesn't matter what country we're going to go to.
Yeah.
When we talk to ski instructors, it snowed today, goggles down. Oh man. Oh God, that's crazy. All the lineup stuff we have. It's so fun. So all this computer stuff taking us away from just the lineup, and like you get your assignment and go meet the people on your own. It's like, lineup was so much fun. We all lined up.
Well, and I'll even
figure it out.
share this. Back in the day at Sunshine Village, and I think the acronym was PDA. We had a PDA account, so it meant you could charge things in the local restaurant. And we in the day the programming was ski week, so that meant meals and so on. And I'm pretty sure my I owed the mountain more at the end of most months than what they owed me, which was like whatever, some food charged to the account, and because the rest of the time was spent training. And I'm sure there were months where that balance of the mountain money.
Oh my God, that's great. But it is crazy though. I mean, you put a lot of work and effort in, and like you said, I think you're skating, ice skating. I mean, because when I kind of looked into you a little bit, it wasn't just that you were a Canadian ice skater in hockey. You were like every day skating.
I read. I grew up, that's, and especially, well, I'm really going to date myself. I remember the small I lived in. I remember when it got quote unquote artificial ice, which means ice that could be refrigerated. I remember when that happened, and that, and that typically meant that, we would both have ice time in the morning, preschool, and ice time afterwards as well. So yeah, it was, and I don't know if that was, all of my success, but I definitely grew up liking sports, was involved in sports, and I think I took some of that, whatever you want to call it, athletic approach to the skiing. And then, I mean, probably the biggest thing is I had access to great trainers, and I think, if there's something, as we get deeper in the conversation, I think that's so, I see that everywhere I go, right? Like I see that, when I've had a chance to hang out with the Americans, at the National Academy, or some of our colleagues worldwide, when you get to hang out with people that are really good at their craft, it's really hard to not absorb that, right? And I was lucky in my early years. I got to hang out with some people that were really good at what they did.
We actually chat about that a lot, because Angelo, I know he wants to bite in, because some of our areas, even here, when we look at our eastern region, a lot of our membership say it's hard to get that ed staff type level, and especially national team. I mean, even here in the eastern U.S., we've always struggled, and finally we got a bunch now on the team.
We talk about, and it's funny because I read your, I read your questions that you sent to Perry last week before the podcast, and one of the notes I wrote was about that. That's a remarkably quick ascension from like non-certified to fully certified, and it's remarkable. Like, I was really interested in what you thought the factors were that influenced that. And the hockey is obvious. I mean, that's an obvious physical factor. But I remember having conversations with Nick Heron about barriers to entry. And it doesn't seem like you had any or many of those, other than the fact that you'd never skied before. Like that was your barrier, was you never did. But that scholarship in my mind is huge. Like cost seems to be a big barrier to entry for a lot of people who are college age trying to get involved in the organization. But that scholarship must have made you feel really welcome to explore it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'll say this. I was very blessed. In my level 2 was paid for by a scholarship, because again, I don't know if I would have known enough to take the course without that, because it was so just out there, right? So that was a real win. And I'll say this, I'm proud of this to this day. The way the CSIA is set up, we've got a national organization, we have regions, 6 regions across the country as well, and either through the national program or the regions, a considerable amount of money is reinvested to the membership through scholarships. And I think that's a key thing. And it's a catalyst to keep people in the system at key times. It's a catalyst to keep people growing and so on. And I was definitely an advocate, or not an advocate, that's the wrong word. I was definitely a benefit of that process. Like, I was helped really early in the system, because again, how You guys remember the game show Price is Right? I often think of life well, this is a really obscure thought. I often think of life as the Plinko chip game.
Oh,
And the Plinko, as it falls down, you don't quite know which way it's going to go. And when I took that, that Plinko chip, when I got access to that level 2 CSIA course, and it was a scholarship, like that is a key part where at that moment in time, the chip went this way, and it totally changed the course of my life. Because in life, I think some things you're in control of, right? But some things, like some of those courses of events, they just happen too.
No, that's pretty cool. So, so you've only been managing director for 4 years, so there was a lot in between of skiing and teaching. So, the skiing and teaching in the winter, what was the summers?
Well, I can give a bit of a background. So in my early days, so like I said, I did the New Zealand thing, and then I got quite quickly involved in ski area marketing, and that's augmented, my winter ski school operations period. So I typically did, and again, I'm going to date myself. So ski resort marketing prior to the internet was typically ski shows, right? Which meant consumer shows in the fall, group shows in the spring. And I would do that and that with other marketing work, like literally creating brochures and so on. So I got involved in marketing positions at resorts, like mostly Banff, and then that took my ski industry career year round. Eventually, I'll mention this, in that era of being on the road and doing ski shows, I would often be in the same city at the same place of a colleague of mine, a guy by the name of Andy Cohen, who happens to be a few things. He's one of us, and when I say that, like, he's a CSIA level 4. He also happens to be the current chairperson of Canada West Skiers Association. He is an American, I think, originally, and a fully cert PSIA member and so on. And then in those days, we'd often end up at the road at the same time in the same place, and he'd say, you know what, Whistler, they're going to do lots there. There's going to be lots of investment, and you should really think about moving out there. And I go, no, you're crazy. I got a good gig here, and there's no way I would do it. But eventually, that kind of led me to having my eye on Whistler, and it was that conversation with Andy that eventually, then I transitioned to Whistler. I was really lucky, so I got involved in Whistler on Blackcomb, which was, considerably before the merger of Whistler and Blackcomb. Got involved with the ski school at a fairly young thing there, and was happy to be a part of a team like where that growth curve was unbelievable, like, crazy. And I say that with pride. That's definitely some things that we did strategically. But it's all, it was also a process of, where the resort was at its time. If this dovetails into my Mike Porter story, like as an early young ski school director at Blackcomb, I often considered, I'll be wondering if bosses are watching this at the time. I would convince my boss at the time we definitely need to do some research trips. So I spent quite a bit of time as the ski school director in Blackcomb in Colorado, chatting to guys like Mike Kaplan at the time when he was ski school director at Aspen, and of course he's moved on, higher up the ranks in Aspen, but one of the key people was Mike Porter, and he was so generous in sharing, lessons that they learned positively and negatively, in my early days in Blackcomb. And I remember one trip that I met with Mike. I had a notebook this full of notes, and maybe that's going to say this is that that opportunity for us to learn and share from each other is a crazy rich opportunity. And so I definitely had influence in my career, by some of my American colleagues, like guys like you, to the south of the border. And maybe I'll finish the Mike Porter story. Then fast forward to Bulgaria, it's interski, and I'm taking a workshop, and I think it's with the Danish demo team at the time, and the Danish team leader that does this workshop, he breaks us out into 3 groups, and there's everybody's skiing around, goggles down, whatever. There's the first guy named, and there's this guy, with a blue jacket, and it's got a PSIA logo on the arm, but goggles down, and he goes, "Yeah, my name's Mike," and I'm going, like, Mike, and then eventually lift your goggles up, and it's Mike Porter. And I didn't know if he would have remembered me, but anyways, I reiterated that story of him, helping me out many years ago. And then fast forward, Angelo, to our, literally at National Academy at Big Sky. It was really great to connect with Mike again. Just love the.
Well, it's a neat story because what Angelo and I, when we started the podcast, a big part of the reason for the podcast was to try to get us to our listeners, right, Angelo, to people, our national team members or other folks in the industry they don't get to speak with. And yeah, go ahead, Angelo. I know you're chatting there.
Well, I was kind of laughing because we spent a great day at Academy last year skiing with Porter, and Perry and Nick Heron joined us for most of the session. It was really great. And I don't know, Perry, I think you guys had peeled off, but Porter ends up getting us lost. We were trying to head back to dinner, and he had to. It was the night of Ron LeMaster's.
I was still there.
Okay.
I was there when we walked out. Yeah.
We end up like Porter's like, I know a shortcut. And we're like, oh shit. So we go across this little walking bridge, and all of a sudden we're by a dumpster behind these condos. And he's like, yeah, I don't know where the hell I am. He's like, I get everybody lost. Don't worry about it. It's nothing new. But super generous. He, if anybody who listens to this ever gets a chance to meet or ski with Mike Porter, take it.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Oh God!
I hope I get this right, but in the complete where we end up, I don't know. We have to walk out of this lower parking lot to get back to the ski hill. I did get it. It was a great. Actually, it worked out. I had a great, and I'm pretty sure her name's Kathy, and she might be. I'm probably going to totally get her title wrong, but CEO of one of
Kathy Brennan,
maybe
Eastern. Yeah, she's our
anyway,
CEO in the East. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so Kathy, that detour where we had to walk out for 10 or 15 minutes to stroll with Kathy, and we had a great chat.
It's amazing how those interactions happen. It's just going to those places, hanging out with folks, and chatting. I mean, that's a cool thing. A lot of people ask me, and Angela, and they definitely ask me, you guys do this podcast and no one pays you. You have some sponsors, but what do you get out of it all the time you put into it? And it's like, I get to sit down with someone like you, Perry, who's the managing director of the Canadian Ski Instructor Alliance, and chat like we're having a beer or having a coffee. And I get an hour of their time that no one else is bothering. I get to ask and learn. It's really cool. Those things. That's what Angela loves this stuff.
Well, the other funny thing about Porter, I don't know if I think it might've been the next day. He had to go to a meeting, and he was with a group. And he's like, I guess it was 3:30 or whatever. He's like, I got to peel off and get ready for this meeting. And they talked him into another run. He's like, well, all right, I can skip a shower and go to the meeting. So I'll take another run. So he did that. They get to the bottom and like, come on, Mike, do another run. He said, well, I can probably just take my ski boots off and go in my shoes. So he took another run. They talk him into one after that. He ends up walking into this meeting full ski garb. Like they got off the hill like 5 minutes before his meeting started. But the dude he loves the ski. It's obvious. He loves to share. It's obvious. And anyway, Porter.
So to kind of segue here, how does a ski instructor coming out of phys ed education, college, and want to be a ski instructor, that's your life and plan, go into marketing, all this stuff. How do you decide that you want to be the mayor of Tofino, which is it a city or town on one of the islands off British Columbia there?
It's a town, and that isn't a direct connection. It's not like, hey, I wanted to do that. But a few things happen in life. Is one, all of my life has been in the ski industry, other than 12 years, almost to the day. 12 years. I worked in the ski industry, and at one point, and that was my background, and that's the way my resume would have read, if you will. But having said that, in the marketing of ski resorts, I often worked with colleagues that were in the hotel business, and I thought, well, you know what, maybe my resume needs some width to it. I applied for a job in Vancouver, became the director of marketing for a downtown Vancouver hotel. A couple of months into that job, they happened to let go of the general manager at the time. I didn't tell anybody that I didn't know what I was doing, but they gave me kind of the keys to the hotel to run it. And then that, so I became the general manager there. That then led me to the general manager of a hotel in Tofino. And I mean, maybe for your listeners, I need to Tofino. It's a unique little place, very west coast of Vancouver Island, quite remote. Beautiful beaches. It's very not like Canada. It's beautiful, pristine beaches. And I'd never been there before taking the job, and the owner of the resort took me out there. And I looked at the resort and I went, well, it's clear nobody knows about this place. And I thought opportunity, right? Like I just thought there's a huge opportunity to get in at the ground level. So took that job. At the time, in Canada, we have a thing, and this isn't exactly true by means, but if you take a place like Whistler or Banff, they're all, destinations, and they all have an organization like Tourism Banff or Tourism Whistler and so on. And, no different than, what you would see at US destinations as well, right? But at the time, Tourism Tofino, there was no Tourism Tofino. It was just, kind of this rogue organization. I took the job as GM. Quite quickly worked with my hotel peers, and Tourism Tofino was then formed. A colleague of mine from a different hotel was the organization's first chair. I was its second chair, and that often found me in town council's chambers lobbying on behalf of the tour industry, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I ended up running for mayor. And there's two things that were a catalyst for running for mayor. Is one, my son, there's very little to, if you're not surfing, and if the weather's not conducive to surfing, there's not a lot to do there. There's not a lot of infrastructure in it. But my son played floor hockey, and the floor hockey was a municipal program, but it was run in the school gym. So school board is the landlord, municipal runs the program. Basically, there was an argument between the two organizations, and the kids couldn't play floor hockey. So I basically ran on the plan. If I get elected, we'll fix that relationship, and the kids will play floor hockey. And don't get me wrong, I was kind of a pro economy guy, like pro young family guy, and that's what led me to run for the mayor role. And I'll say this, like I didn't. Those were literally some of the the square the basic kind of cornerstones of why I was interested. But I'll tell you, it was unbelievably rewarding. Like serving, in community service, it was. I mean, I think when you step up into anything like that, it's going to get its attack vectors. That comes with a question, but for the most part, people are pretty appreciative of what you're trying to do, and it was a highly rewarding experience, like unbelievably rewarding. Yeah,
and I was gonna roll thing down because it was an award I didn't know about, and I know I haven't asked you this, but I know you were given an award for some of your community service, the Queen. The Queen's Jubilee Medal. Yes,
and I say this with some pride and when I say this with some pride, what was really cool at the time is it's a small town, like 3,000. It's a small town, but it's very passionate. It's very in Canada, and I say this with pride, most people will know about Tofino. Like it's literally it's the place our Prime Minister would vacation. Time Magazine, and not that I keep track of this stuff, but Time Magazine, top 20 places in the world to visit. I say this with some pride as well. In that Tourism Tofino role, one of the things that we did, and when I say we, I mean totally the community, like through Tourism Tofino, that means other hotel activity providers like whale watchers, surf schools, you name it. We banded together and created a couple of events, worked very closely with O'Neill, the wetsuit manufacturer, and brought the cold water, what is the cold water classic surfing competition to Tofino. And that literally put us on the map to the point that Outside Magazine said, hey, the best surfing destination in North America is in Canada. Who knew? Yeah. And anyways, and that was a really cool thing to be part of. And the first event, the first cold water classic, was an unbelievable event. Like I said, 3,000 people in town, and it was a Cinderella story. The hometown boy won the contest, and there wasn't a Tahitian that wasn't on the beach when that happened. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, very cool, and a very passionate community, and it was great to be a part of it and to serve for those people.
Well, congratulations! I knew it was a big award when I was reading up on it, and I didn't really understand it myself in terms of, because I never had heard of it before, but I knew it was a pretty prestigious award. And to me, it kind of in your chat, it really shows, your passion for community and for others and caring. And I mean, that's what great teachers show, right, Angelo?
That's correct.
That's correct. Angelo's almost speechless. I can't believe it. You just told me I was correct too. I need to have that triple record.
Well, to fast forward when, eventually, well, and I'll share part of the story, in my life, I did have, another, as we all do, right? I had another fairly life-changing moment. I had a real turn for the worst health-wise, had cancer. It was stage 4 large B-cell lymphoma. Wow. The chemo that eventually cured me almost killed me. And literally when I was going through that whole process, I basically, it's going to sound a little philosophical, but had that conversation with myself and said, you know what, life's short. And if I have an opportunity to get back to the ski hill with the right opportunity, that's where I want to go. And then, and watching, and, all the time, and I'll say this, for the 12 years that I was outside of the business, I skied 3 days. Yeah. I was totally, and Tofino, part of that's a little bit logistics, like Tofino's a bit remote, but I'm borrowing an analogy from a colleague of mine. I was always a ski instructor looking over the fence to see what was going on in my old world, and, and watched what was going on and so on. And then, when this opportunity came up, I definitely applied for it because I was interested, and I'll say this without, I kind of had the CSIA background, being, trained level 4, etc. But I also had this community side of it too, and this working in my current role. Like, I am the managing director, which means I'm the paid employee that reports to the democratically elected board. So I do kind of get some of the nuances that come with those dynamics and how it works, and I thought that I could provide some value to the organization, and hopefully the organization feels that, and that's kind of the short version of where I am today.
It's wild how things shape and form us and push us in a direction. It's cool. And we leave Surfino, Turfino. I was thinking surfing, so it's like, well, I read that you can surf there year round.
Yeah.
It's got to get cold in January.
Actually, it's true. I mean, I won't get my conversions that right, but in Celsius, the water can be 13 degrees in August, and it can be 13 degrees in January. So it means, the air temperature could be, 20 degrees in January and 20 degrees in August, which means 70, right? And again, those are, some anomalies, but it can. In fact, when I was working at the resort, I used to run these specials that I would call them the GM CLM special, and CLM stands for career limiting move, where I'd throw some crazy promotion out there that would get rid of some distressed inventory. And one of the points, when Vancouver in and of itself rarely gets snow, but there was one winter that Vancouver itself got snow, which means people were really reluctant to travel. So I did a no snow guarantee at the lodge in Tofino, which means if it snowed, you would get your entire vacation free. It was a big gamble. I did have to pay out on it once, but I'd done my homework. I'd gone through all the weather records. The airport's just down the road, about 5 kilometers away, and the chances of it snowing were pretty slim. It's a bit of a tangent, but it's a long answer to say yes, you can surf there year round. And for the dedicated surfer, stores that produce well tend to be in the winter.
Well, we're going to have to tell the Boyd brothers, Jeb and Matt Boyd, they have to stop going to Puerto Rico in the wintertime for their week surfing, and they've got to go up to Torrefino. I mean,
well, and I'll say this: the first time I went in the water, I thought, oh man, that is not appealing. But the thing with technology is it works. You know, it clearly works. You can. I spent, you know, when the weather is completely going sideways on a ski hill, you know. It can be nasty and be hardy to be out there enjoying it. Well, it's a little bit the same in surfing in Tofino, but the cool thing is the technology, it works, right? Like
that's awesome. So we should move in a little deeper into the Canadian Ski Alliance since we have the managing director here, and I'm not sure how much Americans are PSIA-AASI members know about the Canadian system. Can you just give us kind of an overview of your part of it with the Canadian Ski Instructor Alliance?
Sure. So a national body, about 20,000 members. You know, some people quote that number, you know, a little bit different, but we're pretty stable at 20,000 members across the country. And like a lot, you know, 14% of our members are not domestic, if that makes sense. They're either, you know, overseas members or you know, I'm generalizing a bit, but some of those overseas members, you know, they ended that way because they probably did a gap program in Canada at some point at their level 1 and level 2. But that, you know, that's our membership, 20,000. We've got a 4-level system, you know, so you enter the system at level 1. Level 1, you know, and this is rough. Level 1 would be your entry, kind of an apprentice level. Level 2, everything to and including parallel skiers, you know, which would be a bulk of our membership. Level 3, pretty well versed in everything, which means, you know, some, you know, definitely some, you know, other terrain like bumps and so on, you know, advanced level skiing. And then once you're there's a couple of sub steps in there as well. As a level 3, you then could go through the process to be a level 1 course conductor. And then as before, then you would be a course conductor, and then you would go through some steps there to be a course conductor of all the other levels. So that's kind of our, you know, the nuts and bolts of our system. In the organization, we've got everything of what we call in the pathway, which is that 4-level system. We do offer programs to our membership outside of the pathway as well, which we call pro days and pro sessions, which, you know, they're professional development opportunities that have no accreditation directly attached to them. Just a chance to get out and ski and improve your teaching with one of our, you know, senior people.
So in the U.S., our ski instructors and snowboard instructors, because you just have ski instructors in your group, correct? Because the snowboard is separate.
Yeah. In Canada, the way things, he evolved over time. Where, you know, all of our different disciplines have their own, you know, complete organization. I'm going to say this, so, you know, we've got and again, it's my opinion, but we've got a great level of cooperation. So we work quite closely with our CSIA, colleagues, which is the snowboard side of things. We work quite closely with Alpine Canada, which is the coaches side of things. And, you know, I'm going to miss some too, like CANSI, which is the Nordic side of things, and so on. So, and CADS, which is anybody that's got, some capacity or ability issues and what that looks like. You know, we're pretty, we connect on a regular basis. We share curriculum or our research where possible and try and learn from that. But the long answer again is we're not the same organization.
Yeah, and here in the U.S., they don't have to be members of our organization to teach at resorts. Is it similar in Canada?
You know, that it's a good question. That comes ultimately. That's in the hands of the resort. Like, you know, there is no legislation that says, you know, the person needs to be a CSIA member. I say this again with some pride. Most ski resorts, you would have to be, you know, a CSIA member. But in one of your pre-questions as well, like I know a lot of, you know, ski schools, they will offer an equivalency as well. So if you were, i.e., a PSIA level X versus a CSIA level Y, you know, they would match those two things up, and and it would meet. I mean, because one thing, and I know one of your other questions too is, I did get a chance at the last Ski to meet Nick Harrison and so on. And, when I look at us as an organization and the PSA in the entire ski world, we do have a lot of similarities. And I can boil it down to one point as well. Like some of our area operators are the same people, whether it be some of the big ones like Vail Resorts or Alterra, Boyne Mountain, and again, that list, some of those ownership structures and those business models are the same regardless of the border that puts in between us. So, when I did get a chance to connect with Nick last in Bulgaria, we as the two organizations, we have so much, I would argue, to gain from with each other, learning from each other, and so on. One of which, because our dynamics are quite similar.
Yeah, and your members, is it a big bulk or full time? And just, I imagine, also in Canada, the ski instructors at the resorts, is it a big group of full-time people or part-time teaching skiing? Because here in the U.S., especially in the East Coast, we tend to be very part-time oriented at our resorts.
Yeah, that's changing. And I'll be since COVID, we haven't done like a detailed annual membership survey, so I can't give you the hard stats on that. But I can say this quite comfortably: is in the world, those things are changing quite dramatically. So there would be very few ski instructors that this is the only thing that they do. Yeah. I would argue that our membership, which is the staff of the ski schools across the country, they're pretty industrious, resourceful people. So they've figured out a way to make this work, right? So that means, whether they're a contractor in the summer, I am going to quote some of our demo team members. I've got a demo, we have a demo team member that's a nurse. We have a demo team member that's a veterinarian. Like, we've got people that have figured out how we senior people that are, and if you take some other walks of life where it allows some flexibility in scheduling to be a ski pro, that works. A number that are flight attendants, a number that are pilots, some work scenario that's out, that they do it. So the chances of this being the only profession, really slim. I mean, most people have something else going on.
Do you see, as Angelo was talking, we're finding here in the U.S., we're trying to find those barriers that are keeping young people from coming in like us crazy people did years ago. All three of us came in and got hooked right away and built their life around it. It's like we did our first thing and speech, okay, this is what I know what I want to do. And like you said, you had all your money went to the food and that. Right. At the end of the week, end of the month, you had no money, was all theirs again. But I mean, do you see issues with young people getting involved and staying involved in Canada as ski instructors?
Of course, the answer is yes. What that means, and that so many avenues I could take that conversation. One of which is, and again, this is a bit of a personal opinion, but I believe it's true. One of the hard things about our business is to be good. You have to be good. So my point is it's not like, with very little training or very little experience, it's hard to offer value to the end user, the customer, or a ski school, and so on. So that's one of the dynamics that's in play. And when I say that, it's not like everything that it's funny. We like the US, and I don't know your exact numbers. I mean, the good news is we have 83 years of history. Bad news is we have 83 years of history. And I mean that, a little bit tongue in cheek. It's great, and we've learned a lot along the way. But it's also evolving. And where I'm going with this is I think it's not that we've changed our focus, but we've balanced our focus on education, making sure that our people have the tools so they are good, so it does work, so that they can make a go of this. And it's evolving. And what I'm about to say again, it's not that it's wrong, but we don't just teach, a set of maneuvers or a curriculum that this is what you recite when you get out in front, because ultimately you'll end up in a position where reciting a script won't work. right? As experienced pros, we all know that you got to be able to know what you're doing. You've got to have some experience, and you got to be able to work this way, as you're working with a client to all connect and make some learning happen and so on. So I'm going with a long answer, but I think we've dug deeper into the education side of it, which is showing returns. And what I mean by showing returns, it's getting us skewing a bit younger. It's getting us skewing a bit more female. Getting us skewing a bit more with some of our underrepresented communities by going I believe that. I think one of the key answers to that is by being more focused on the educating people the tools. Are we helping them to get there? Because that's the thing, when it's too cut and dry, it doesn't set them up for success. We have found a bit of a magic bullet in our system, which is, and one of the problems is the retention of a level 1. Well, that magic bullet is get them to be a level 2. Like the life of a level 1 is a year. The life cycle of a level 2 is 10 years. The life cycle of a level 3 is 25 years. And God forbid, if you end up at level 4, even if you take me as an example, even when I left that, and that's my story, but that's a story that would repeat time and time again through our organization.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we see that here. I know in the East, especially, I think it's across the country for us. I know here in the East, because I've seen the numbers be on the board the last 4 years, is that, if we get people to our level 2, they like 80% or 85%, I think it's around the mark, stay in your organization for long term. Level 1s, it's kind of that revolving door. It's getting better, but it's still a revolving door. We see the same thing. And Angela, I know you had something there. I was just, and go ahead. Not even gonna say it.
I was looking over some literature from, and I don't know, Perry, if what I looked at over the last week was published by CSIA, or because I know, people who are studying for certification exams make their own materials and then publish them online and stuff. But I saw your collaborative teaching approach, right, which I think is your model. Like that's your official model that's endorsed by the organization. And I read it, and I mean, and this isn't a knock. I was like, oh, this is the learning connection model. This is really very, very, very similar to what we do. Know the learner, create the experience, assess the experience, explore the possibilities. I thought super cool. I love the explore the possibilities piece, because we use in our system, under one of our teaching fundamentals, the teaching strategy of exploration, right? Which is super high level. It's super high end teaching, super high end coaching, but it gets the learner way more involved than what you're describing as the rote model, like memorize this series of steps and go out and say it to these people. So I think there are a lot of parallels between our systems. I do have a question, and I saw that, and I don't know if this is something officially from the organization or not, but I saw pole plants described as a secret weapon for our skiing. Is that an official? It said in a CSIA level 1 certification guide, candidate guide, describes pole plants as a secret weapon. And I'm hoping you can let us in on the secret.
Oh God! You probably just send me into a minefield. Well, no, I didn't. What's my right answer? Sure.
Yeah, no, that's it. Great, thanks. Next question.
Well, I think in our recent era, like again, we got 83 years of really rich history, right? And one of the things, in the current round, with all the good stuff that we have, and I'm not saying we're done yet, but we are trying to organize it that it makes sense in a system. So we go, because because, well, one, the science is the same, regardless of whether you're on this side of the border or that side of the border when it comes to learning theory and all the rest of it. So yeah, it totally makes sense. There's so many similarities, but where I'm going with this is, we've been trying to orchestrate stuff. Okay, this was good, in this era when we did this, but how does it fit? And how does it fit so our end user, our member, or just it? Where does that stuff fit? So we spent a lot of time of going, well, taking everything off the table, putting everything back on the table, going, okay, this fits there, this fits there. Because we use centered, and I'm not saying that we're not, but that was in quotation marks. We used to be reflective learning, we used to be skills concept, like all these different things, and we are trying to put it together. Not that it's, I would say, different, but just so that it's digestible, so that it can be used. Because and I'll say this, when I first took the job, and I ran this by my board, I spent quite a bit of time literally going across the country, so in each region, seeing different levels of certification courses in each region and so on. And one of the things that I'd often come across is saying right things, but getting it wrong. And because they didn't quite understand the context, or we were in this, the CSA wants us to do this, therefore you would take that carbon copy and just repeat that, when the reality is there's far more nuances to our job than reciting a script. So the collaborative teaching approach, I mean, in one video, we do have a video that show, that kind of sums up the collaborative teaching approach. And I'm a bit of a fan of this analogy. It's like a plant growing. Ultimately, it's the plant's responsibility to grow. No one else is involved in that. So as the course conductor, or as the instructor, the facilitator, you help, right? Like maybe add some nutrients, you make sure that the soil is prepared and all the rest of it, which in our world is, am I using the right train for the situation, the right turn shape, like all these dynamics that you can control, but ultimately the growing of the plant is the plant's job. And that's the whole collaborative thing, if you will, in a nutshell.
And I've heard our process described really similarly. And Dave, I think it was Michael Rogan who said pretty much verbatim, like when they were doing the fundamentals at the team level, we took everything off the table and put it back on to see where it fit. And I was looking at at active and reflective learning, throughout the week as I was prepping for tonight, and the notes I wrote about active and reflective learning, it's like, we've done the same thing in American education. And I mean, more broadly, not snow sports education, just education generally, where it's like, you're this or that. You're an active learner or you're a reflective learner. And if you look at literature from 15, 20 years ago in education generally, you see things like that. You're this or that. Which one of these 4 learning styles are you? But then as you use it, and as your experience with it matures, you're like, oh, wait a minute. These, thinker, feeler, seer, doer, you're not one of those. Those are phases of a process, and you're being a doer right now, and you're observing, so you're being a seer. It's the same thing with active and reflective learning. It's not an or, it's an and. You learn actively in this situation, and then later on you reflect. But that's what your collaborative teaching approach does. It takes active and reflective learning and puts them in the same model. And that's
the analogy of a pendulum. Like if the pendulum's over here, it doesn't mean you swing the pendulum all over here and go, that was crap. We did that last year. That didn't work. Like, it's not. I want the pendulum to be a little bit more in here, than those guys, they didn't have it right. We have it right now. And it's like, well, no, your point. It's not actually the way it works, right?
So we're moving towards Levi Finland's coming up soon for Interski. And I was trying to look and kind of how the Canadian team picks their team. So is it picked? What I was right, I'm not sure if I have it right. And I know I got Perry here, so we can get it right. It looked like you put it out normally a year or two before the Interski to pick a team, and there's a certain number from each region in Canada that are picked. Because I'm curious, like, do you have a national team like we have that's there for the 4-year term or whatever in between the Interskis, or no?
Yes and no. I mean, some things are similar, some things not exactly in structure. I mean, in the team that we're sending to Levi this upcoming March, we picked them last year, which would have, quote unquote, been a year behind cycle. But the year before with COVID, I mean, some of our areas, and again, I may not get this completely accurate, but some of Canada relative to the US, we had regions in our Canada that completely lost the ski season, like COVID because of health authority restrictions and so on. So we didn't pick the team in its regular cycle. We were kind of a year behind that, and we did pick it. And there's in our organization, which does fit our organization. Does that make sense? Because so we're a large organization. Well, we're large geographically, small community, small populated. So I mean, if you were to look at our team, we're doing our best, and I'm not saying perfect, but that we have some geographical representation for sure. That we're skewing heavier on the female side of it, which is a move in the right direction, and all those things. So we do try to balance that. We did use a process in teams previous. There was a skiing component. There was a teaching component. In the past cycle, we didn't do a teaching component. One of which was because of COVID at the time. And so what we did do, we did a skiing approach, which was judged, by some of our most senior people, which, I'm paraphrasing or, summating a little bit, but, which were past demo team members. So they were the judges of the skiing portion of it. They did a detailed video submission talking about our content, and then themselves was part of it. And we did, I'll say, the psychometric testing, which basically, kind of, measured their leadership things, that, their propensity to give back and all those things, those three criteria to come up with the team. One thing that I'll say this, we kind of strategically stumbled across, if that's a word, but we were really happy. Because of that lateness in picking, one of my colleagues, Jeff Marks, who is the head coach of our interski team, him and myself were in Levi last March, for the pre-site visit of interski, and it was really cool because we went to our international colleagues, i.e., some of your key people, like Nick Heron, like Dave Schuling, and some of the Europeans and so on, where they announced our team members. We recorded it all, and so when we announced the demo team, we did it live. When I say live, like virtually, and it was the international community announcing our team members, and that was really cool. Yeah. Like Eric Shackleton did one. Yeah, which is your hometown person, who is the president of Interski. So it was really cool.
Nice. And you spoke that you have more women going in that direction on the team, and I know that you're working hard just on the organization to try to bring more women into skiing, and teaching and getting them up to level 4 trainers. I know you've spoken that need more there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're working there?
And it's probably, and I'll say this, and whenever I say, when I'm about to comment on a big change, when you make a big change, it's a big change, right? Which is we our level 4, our top certification, we changed it to what we now call an academy. So in the old model, it was basically a course and a one-shot exam, and it would typically take a number of tries to get it. But it's not that I know the stats, but I know the stats. So in the old system, if you were trying for the level 4 on your first attempt, 2.7 people across the country would get it. That's it. Pretty low. So we changed it to an academy. So now there's a selection camp, which so there's basically a test to get in. And the test to get in is making kind of the evaluation that, there's a real good chance with this amount of training, you'll come out at the end and you'll have a chance of getting it. So there's a selection camp to get in. There's 3 camps in the process, throughout that, and there's check-ins in between with your coaches. So in our system, we quadruple the amount of time on task, right? Like the volume to get that top level is like 4 times what it once was. And yes, as per that it's a big change, but it's also a simple change because we basically increased the volume of training, and it's met with a very significant outcome. And that outcome is exactly as you're saying. We're skewing better. We're skewing better female. We're skewing better younger. Because the other side of it too is and this isn't, again, as a guy with white in his beard, as we skew up, in age, which is fine, but we've also got to skew younger. We got to be aware of that. And we as an organization have to skew the right direction in a population that's aging out. We've got our own demographic, challenges within the country's demographic challenges that are tough for us. And we got to be aware of that to keep us healthy so that we don't skew out. And I'll share this. This is another thing that has been, when I think of, the number of discussions that I've had with my management team and our senior course director team and so on, is I want to make sure the young and up and coming talent has access to the old talent and wisdom and strength before it's too late, right? Like, I use the analogy of when I get in a plane, that when I walk by the cockpit, ideally I might be seeing, the older, and I'm just totally stereotypical, but if there's one person that's a little bit senior, I know he or she's been around and they've got a few war stories. But then there's a younger person. Well, I know they're up to date on the latest training, and in my best case scenario, there's probably a male in the cockpit and a female. There's those robust dynamics in play that work, and I think we all win. And I want to make sure that we get through the system, that all that wealth and experience is carried on and stays alive in the system and doesn't skew out so that there's too much of a gap between this generation and this generation.
We have that conversation. Well, we just have that same conversation a lot at the, among ed staff. We have it at the resort level. It's the same conversation, here.
Yeah.
Training our replacements.
Yeah, well, Coach Wen had some good conversation on that training last year, the year before, that, some of us are getting old, but we still have some things that we want to get down to the younger folks that are coming in that, some folks, there's not many more years you get it out of them. So you got to work on it both ways. But yeah, we're hearing a lot. So what are you looking for personally at Interski? Like for you, are you looking to go see are you looking to certain countries for just curious of what they're doing, or what are your goals?
What's really great, and in the kind of the micro event that happened this past March, it was great to see our colleagues again, like at the international community, like post-COVID, the energy to get back together again is palatable. Like you can just feel it, which is great. And I think this Interski coming up, everything, the venue is unbelievably well suited for this event. The hosts, unbelievably hospitable, great people. In fact, I think it was this morning I saw a post from Levy Finland. So they put a whole bunch of infrastructure upgrades into the system. Like a new chairlift on the demo slope, grades to the demo slope, but had a bit of a fall away that they fixed, and they started skiing today. And anyway, so the host, and it's just, I think it's just going to be great to get back to, so if you ask me, I don't know, I'm not looking at one country. I think it's just going to be great to get back together with everybody. Because, one thing that I think COVID might have taught us is, in this world of Zoom, right now, being able to get together, we have so much to gain from each other. Yeah. So it's not about what the Canadians are talking about or the American. I just think we have so much to learn from each other, and the energy we get from each other. So if you're asking me what I'm looking forward to, is I'm looking forward to the whole experience. And I'm, like Jeff and I got, we got to do the pre-site visit. I'm excited for our team to see it. I'm excited for our team to meet with the other teams. For the first time in Canadian, I think we're 3 Interskis deep where we an organization haven't sent a member delegation, and this year we are some members, there's and again, this is a playbook that I kind of stole from you guys, i.e. Nick, we're selling member packages so that our members kind of at large can go take part in the event and see it and so on, which is a very cool thing. Because just to connect with the international community, it's invaluable. And I know this as an organization, there's things that we haven't taken advantage of to the full amount that we could. earlier this week, and I'm going to get the new acronym wrong because I know Dave Schuling's on the board, but I think the new acronym is IAESS, but it used to be IVSS. It's funny, just as when I finally got my head around IVSSS, then they changed it. But anyway, a work of, kind of the conglomerate of educational, instruction bodies around the world, working on some research projects and so on. There's a huge opportunity. And why would we, one organization, reinvent the wheel? From another organization when if we work on it together, we'll probably figure it out quicker, etc. Right? Like it's just more to gain from working together.
Yeah, because I know Angelo and I will not mind if you put in something to Kathy Brennan, our CEO here in the East, that us two really need to come to Canada and visit with Perry and do some clinic he's got going on up there or something. I mean, that'd be great, wouldn't you think, Angelo?
I think everybody would benefit from that hugely.
Well, and I'm not anticipating it changing, but when Nick and I, of course, he's moved on to a new exciting role. But when Nick and I, first connected as well, and again, it's part of our history too. It's not like it's never been done before, but just and this is where I met you, Angelo. Any opportunity that we can connect with each other, again, I think we have to win. So when Nick and the PSA team, invited me and a couple of demo team members, Seb and Kyle, down to the National Academy, I mean, it was great to be a part of that. Again, learned definitely lots of takeaways that we can take. We've been in conversations with Dave again, of getting, some PSIA team members up to our event, our kickoff event at Lake Louise and Tremblant and so on. So, just the more that we can share, again, yeah. I don't see anything but wins there.
Well, this has been awesome, Perry. And I want to thank you a bunch. I know Angelo's got a couple more things, but
are you planning, if you'll be at National Academy again this year?
Well, yes, that is the plan, whether it's me and or some other members of my team and so on, is one, because again, like I'd love for more of us to witness what you guys do down there. Like, it's a first class event. The PSA does a great job. Really impressed. Like, and again, there's stuff that we can learn there. The spirit in your system is great. It's great energy. Doing a lot of good stuff. And it's been a real pleasure in my role to work. And I don't want to miss anybody's name, but people that I've had of course, Nick. I've had a chance early on was Ed Younglove, and then Eliza. Eliza's worked with with my chair at the time, Darren McDonald. Dave Schuling, Jeb had a chance to ski with Matt. Matt, his brother, had that day with you, Angelo, and Mike Porter. Just lots of great connections. Anne from Jackson Hole, got a chance to ski with her. And anyways, like you get lots of great people down there doing great things, and we can learn from each other without question.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was, I got to ski with you, Perry, and a few other people from other countries. I got to hang out with Seb a little bit at the sponsor party. Really super down to earth guy. But what jumps out the most when you like at Academy, when you meet people from other countries, is like how similar everybody is. Like that to me is the takeaway. Everybody's fired up. Everybody's looking to get better at this, and we're more alike than different. And that's a really important thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody knows goggles up, goggles down.
That's right. And if the young people who are listening didn't know that, they can learn from the three old guys on the podcast.
They got it now. Yeah. But and hopefully, Perry, we always like to invite you back. We'd love to have you back to maybe some thoughts on what you thought of Interski in Levy, Finland, and how that went. Maybe sometime in the spring would be great. If you have the time, because appreciate your time to do this. It's really neat. It's awesome where the podcast has taken us a little bit, and be able to speak some folks outside of our country, not just inside our country, is really cool. So thank you for taking the time to do this. And it's been fun for Angelo and I.
Oh, my pleasure. Great chatting with you guys.
Yeah. Really great to see you, Perry.
Yeah. So, hey, shout out to all our listeners out there. Hope you enjoyed the podcast tonight. This has been the Fall Line with Chaos and Company.